Welcome onto the show, I guess tonight. What can you introduce yourself to the community who's watching right now? I see we have CCP Monty who just followed us tonight.
Hello, CCP Monty. So I'm Coltitus Mando. I go by Colt because, like, a lot of times when people try to pronounce my name, it sounds like a disease, and so Colt is just a lot easier. Um, I started playing back in 2013 when I was a teenager. I'm not a teenager anymore, clearly, and I have had the kind of a cycle going on, like I think a lot of Eve players have, where they get interested in playing Eve, scratching the itch, leaving, and then coming back. Um, and I think that eventually like continues until you decide that you're going to win Eve, or you actually like you find the group that you enjoy hanging out with. And so started hanging out with uh, Totality Squad and Virage uh, around the Equinox expansion last year. And yeah, I just been doing that ever since. Joined Pochfen, even though I wasn't a part of the Trig Invasion, which I regret dearly. I really wish I had been a part of that. Um, but yeah, I'm a Pochfen resident. I do a lot of solo small gang content there. Some people hate me because I hang around observatory flashpoints in a cloaked Loki and just kill people. Usually dictors for OBS fleets or salvagers that are doing stuff over there. Just like kind of in my free time when I'm just like doing work.
Really
um,
quickly, last week I think I was flying around in Pochven and I was about to grab a salvager at one of the points, and a Loki decloaked next to me.
that
Um,
was me.
that was you, yes,
That
awesome.
was
Let's
me.
go. Fucking a, this
Yep.
is sweet.
I do remember that now that you mention it. Yeah, because I
What?
had I had direct messaged you directly after that
Yeah.
because I didn't know that you were going to decloak at the same time that I did, and so I felt bad because you had him dead to rights more or less,
Oh
and then I
my
just kind of wanted
god.
to go for you because I think you were like what in a Tholos or something like that.
I was in a it's like the Concords frigate Cloaky Boy
Oh,
pacifiers. I was in pacifier.
pacifier. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like 20 minutes later I caught a DST that was AFK and I ran out of ammo, and then I had to message a
Oh,
buddy
damn.
to come and give me ammo. That was a very fun night for me.
Yeah, that's
This is
really fun.
amazing.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
That's so funny.
I mean, it's fun that you mentioned that. Like Parchment is just full of those like little stories, right? Where just like these little interactions happen, and it just seems like surreal to like think about. Like, man, like this is actually happening, like just all the time in Parchment. Really, I mean, yeah, I know that you were talking with Drake here, and I didn't catch the entire interview, but I did catch like the tail end of it when you guys were talking about Parchment. Um, and yeah, Parchment is has like a lot of issues, but I think that it is definitely, in my opinion, one of the best spaces to fly in if you're doing solo and small game content.
Yeah.
100%.
I've tried doing like bubble camps in Potchman, but with all like the CCTV stuff that was going on, it's really hard for us to go and catch anybody who's like warping from gates to gates.
Yeah,
But like with the recent changes, it's been a little bit easier to catch people. So that's been a lot of fun. And like
yeah,
I
100%.
and with the changes as well, I'm starting to do some more solo content on stream into Pochfin, which has also been really fun because now it takes time for people to extract from Pochfin.
Hmm.
So like I caught a like that night too. I caught a heron that was trying to leave, a Eve Uni heron. I felt like a bit of an asshole, but also you gotta learn if you're gonna be in Eve Uni.
Yeah, exactly. Parchment is definitely like it used to be high sec. It's no longer high sec anymore. I think we need to all agree that if you come into Parchment, it should be with the intention of losing your ship. Like,
Yep.
there's no other reason to like bring stuff out here.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny that you bring up the whole CCTV thing. Drake has done a great job talking with CCP Rampant and like interacting with with the Putchman Roundtable because CCTV was obnoxious, right? Like it killed so much like actual content in the region because of these bots. They don't call themselves bots, but they are 100% bots.
Yeah.
Um, and the removal of that has like even generated like a different kind of flying culture in Pochven. Like everyone is keenly aware of the Dawes liminality locus now. They're like, okay, well, I can't stay close for 15 minutes. There's no other place in Eve that's like that, where you're feeling that, okay, well, I'm cloaked right now, but I really can't go AFK because if I leave while I'm cloaked here, I'm gonna get dazed and people are gonna scam me and kill me. So it's like you have to be fully like aware and online at all times, which is really cool. I think
Yeah.
I noticed that whenever I head to K space for the most recent like for Nemesis when we're trying to do the convoys that were spawning there.
Yeah.
I I felt weird being able to cloak indefinitely because I had spent so much time in Parchment.
Yeah, I kind of want like I do a lot of wormhole content, so I kind of like part of me is like, oh man, it would be nice if we could have decloakers and wormhole space, but
Mhm.
that would completely change wormholes. I don't know if that'd be for better or
Yeah.
for worse.
Yeah.
Cool. Getting back to like you, like we already talked a lot about Drake. What do you want to do on the CSM if you were to be elected this year?
So CSM is just a very recent thing on my radar. I think that small game content in general has been kind of put on the wayside. You can see it with the Equinox and Revenant expansions, with Skyhooks and Mercenary Dens especially. A lot of the content that is not only created for small game content, like if you review what the CCP notes and even dev blogs and diaries that they had during the Alliance tournament last year when they were talking about the Revenant expansion and Merc Dens and how they're going to function, they had this infographic, and I can't find it anywhere for whatever reason, but they were showing the different groups that would be interacting with Merc Dens in particular. And they obviously have null blocks being able to like, use them on their own skyhooks, but they also had small gang, like, small groups coming into Pochven and not Pochven. I'm stuck on Pochven for whatever reason. Coming into Nullsov and putting their own merc dens on these skyhooks in order to either generate content with like small scale fights or to generate wealth from the infomorphs that you can get and kind of be a thorn in the side piracy whatever aesthetic that they were trying to go for with Revenant, right? And that has not materialized in any shape or form.
Yeah, I think I remember
It's
the same thing too, where they were saying like, yeah, this is something that small games are gonna be able to go out and do stuff with, and I have never thought of using it at all because yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it.
Yeah, it was dead on arrival content, right? I mean, no one used it. I mean, to be fair, people used it at the very beginning, but then it became very clear that it's not tenable for small groups to come into Nullsov and day trip just for these merc dens, and it's just not possible to actually make a gameplay loop for these people, right? Because the merc dens are just going to be reinforced, they're going to be exploded, and because you're just a small gang interacting with a larger group, it's just not going to work. And so there definitely needs to be some changes made there because I'd rather not see content just sit there dead, especially when it was so promising when they were describing it. So I think that Merc Dens in particular need a lot of love and need to be re-examined very thoroughly. I can only speculate as to what kind of changes I could make, or not changes I can make, but what changes I could advocate for as a CSM. But 100% there needs to be a more significant debuff to using merc dens on your own skyhook. And it's the
Yeah,
same thing that's the issue with skyhook rating, right? Self rating in skyhooks is killing skyhook rating in general, right? Because you're not able to know if a person self raids, but you can assume that they self raid. But there's no reason for a no group to not self raid. It doesn't harm the production of reagents that are being generated within the skyhook, and if you work off of that assumption, it doesn't take long for you to decide, I want the skyhook, but I'm not really going to get anything out of it. And even if I do, I might get blobbed. So the risk and reward is very imbalanced there. You have a lot of risk, very little reward that you can perceive. Maybe you get a jackpot, maybe they haven't been self-rating, but unfortunately, the additional problem that arises there is that because Null creates these reagents in such great quantities, they flood the market with it, which drives the price down, which makes the value of raiding skyhooks also plummet. So, in addition to actually PvPing you, Nullsoft is able to prevent, or not prevent, but discourage skyhook raiding because they are manipulating the market to drive the prices down to make it less of attractive of an activity. So that's definitely a major issue that I'm seeing with that gameplay loop as well.
Yeah,
But
for me
yeah,
when I do like skyhooking again, merc dens, who cares? Like you said, dead on arrival. But with skyhooking, it would be nice to be able to see. Like I know, like there's like those two giant bars on the side of like the skyhook thing that you interact with. One's usually higher, one's usually lower. People were telling me like, oh, if the one is low, then you know if this has been recently like raided or somebody's like gone in there and scooped up a bunch of the loots. But it would be kind of nice if there was some sort of like, yeah, like it doesn't make sense that people can go in there and muck with their own skyhooks or their own structures, and there isn't some sort of repercussion for going in there and sort of messing with your own workflow of your own infrastructure.
yeah, 100%. And it also ties into the secure hold being a thing. They already have a secure hold, so they're hedging their bets against being rated 24/7, right? Because they still have the secure hold at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And since they have that, it doesn't really make sense that they should be able to self-rate without any repercussions. Because I do remember that when skyhooks were first implemented, when you rated skyhooks, it reset the ramping up collection of reagents, and they did away with that for whatever reason. So there's a lot of stuff that has been changed that definitely was meant to cater primarily to null sov, and I think
Yeah.
that needs to be relooked at.
Yeah,
Um,
that's how that feels too. Yeah.
Mhm. It's funny because, and I'm going back to Merkton just real quick, and I'm only talking about this because you brought up that you hang out in wormholes. My group uh, was living, at least nominally, in a low class wormhole with a null static, and we thought that was a blessing when Revenant was announced because we thought that Merkdens would be these things that you could plop down, basically play null sov for a day where you like try to own this system that you're trying to raid essentially, and then once you're done with all that content, pick up what you've generated so far, including the merc dens, and then just like screw off into your wormhole and then like head out. And I thought that would have been a fun gameplay loop. Obviously there's some issues with that because there's a question of how do you actually counter that. But I think that it was definitely what I'm trying to get at is that it definitely was not what we expected it to be, and it delivered a lot less than was promised. Dead on arrival content, like we've been
Yeah,
saying here.
like skyhooks and it's like Metanox moon drills. They're so prevalent now. They're everywhere. Like
Hmm.
if a small wormhole group comes in and they plop down their I don't know bait merc den for a few hours, then they go back into their wormhole and just like repeat that loop. I don't think it would be a huge detriment to like nullsec. I think that would be kind of fun, sort of emergent gameplay
Yeah,
for them. Like, hey,
I,
you're pissing us off. We're going to maybe do something about it.
yeah, I think so too, and especially because of how the merc dens with how they have. I don't even know if you know this, but they have two different attributes: anarchy and development, and those are things that build up over time, basically over days and days. That basically is meant to say, okay, well, you won't get like full efficiency out of your merc den until it's been sitting there for a while. So the gameplay loop that we're describing here would not actually be optimal because you're constantly resetting the development slash anarchy of these merc dens. And so I don't know. I think it would be a good gameplay loop and wouldn't be extremely broken. But obviously there needs to be more eyes, which is why it's a CSM council and not a singular CSM person, right? You
Yeah.
need to have perspectives from all these people.
Yeah. Like I remember me and a bunch of my small gain friends, we were all mad when they got rid of like you just go raid a skyhook whenever you want essentially. But talking to some nullsec people, they're like, yeah, we would get several pings in on our screens every couple minutes. That was
Mhm.
too annoying for us to deal with. So like, yeah, you have to sort of see it as like a whole ecosystem. You can't just be like, hey, this is the thing I want. Like screw everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. I was interviewing with Loru here last week, and one of the questions he had asked is what would I bring to the table, so to speak, when it comes to CSM? And I think that what I bring is perspective, because like we were just saying here, it can't be an all or nothing approach. You can't only and solely look at the changes that you want to implement or the changes that you want to see. You have to look at everything as dials that all affect each other. Obviously, you could flip the switch, make something do what you want, but then you also have to readjust other things that you wouldn't initially expect if you didn't have a good perspective on how all these systems interact with each other because of how densely populated these game systems are, right? And how they all interact with each other. So I think that is a pretty important thing, and I talked about that for Podman specifically when it comes to the issues with OBS payouts and how these groups are printing as much ISK as they are. And so obviously these people should be demonized because a lot of them are MT and
Yeah.
they are actively ruining the game, like the game economy. But it's not a simple solution to just say just get rid of OBS because that would immediately kill a lot of content, and not just OBS runners. It would kill a lot of content for people who, like me, who are on like the ecosystem, like more of the scavengers, more than
Yeah.
like the big fish, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's a good analogy for even general is this idea of an overlapping ecosystem, how like different biomes kind of interact with each other, even if like they don't directly interact with each other.
Yeah, like you got to think about like there's so many different ways of playing the game. And even though your how you play it as like you said the scavenger, you would you have like a lot of information, you have a lot of expertise in that sort of area. But as a CSM member, you sort of have to be looking at the bigger picture and how like if we get rid of this or we change this thing in a significant way, that it's going to sort of start taking away from others people's fun and reasons why they might want to log into the game and start playing. Like
Yeah,
going,
100%.
yeah. Um, I had a really good question and then it sort of popped out of my brain. If you were to be like advocating for some sort of group in Eve, which what would you be advocating for the most? Would it be small game groups? Would it be for Pochfan? Would it be for wormholes? Would it be for like screwing around with nullsec people, sort of more of a piracy side of things? What is there a particular group that you would be hoping to help the most?
Definitely small gang because all the people, all the groups that you listed there have intersections with small gang. Obviously, not all people who are in Podfin are doing small gang content. Obviously, not all the people who are in wormholes are doing small gang content, but small gangers are everywhere. And there is reason to believe that there is not enough content to keep this play style going like indefinitely, right? Because there are obviously lots of people who like doing small game content, and they're throwing a bone every once in a while. But unfortunately, stuff gets stale, and you start to realize like, I'm not really having as much fun doing what I'm doing here. The system isn't as great as it could be, and until like changes are actually made, like it's very real that these people will peter out and stop doing what they're doing because that's the game's playstyle that they like. Um, but one thing that I think has been beneficial here recently has been obviously the changes that have happened in Podfin, the changes that have happened to ESS. I think that those are all very good changes because it encourages these small groups to go out and actually do this stuff without fear of these large escalations for ESS specifically, right?
Yeah.
Marauders and being cloaked on grid are a very nasty combination. It definitely discouraged a lot of people from actually interacting with that point in space from a group standpoint. Um, a comment that I had read here after the fact of a recent interview was that I wasn't advocating enough for low set groups, and so to kind of like put it in perspective, like how I was saying like how I want to advocate primarily for small gang. Small gang obviously exists in low sec, but low sec is not the only place where small gangers exist. So definitely the people I want to advocate more for are solo to small gang, 100%, because that encompasses a lot more people in a lot more regions than if I were to say, oh, I only really want to focus on Pochfin. I
Yeah.
only really want to focus on messing with Nullsov, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you think there's enough rewards for small game content in Eve currently, or do you think that the CSM or CCP can do more in order to sort of promote that sort of game style? Because talking to a lot of new bros, they're pushed into Brave or they're pushed into Fraternity or whoever else, just because that's the best ISK per hour. Do you think that that should be changed?
Yeah, I definitely think it should be changed. Like, I don't. I'm not saying that null people should not be able to make a large amount of ISK being out in null. It is a quote unquote lawless space, and it should be treated as more or less end game content. But I also believe that not everything should follow a strict hierarchy. I think that there should be side grades as opposed to just like directly upgrading, like quote unquote upgrading to
Yeah.
being in null. So no, I don't believe that there's enough content for small gangers. I think that a lot of the recent toys that have been released have basically all been to null. I can't remember the last expansion that was catering to anyone but larger groups. And I guess I put that into perspective of a small ganger because I don't really do capital fights. I don't really do any of these large escalation fights. And obviously, low sec is not. Oh well, it's just you only see like cruiser and below. No, obviously dread brawls and everything are happening out in low sec all the time. Um, but I think that small game content is just not in general profitable at
Yeah.
like doing it for a very long time compared to other activities, and I don't think that's right. I can point to specific things in Parchment as an example. I don't want to kind of like just yell numbers at you more or less, but I
I
do kind of just want to like point at it
yeah,
real quick if I
yeah, go
can.
ahead.
Yeah. So we have 4 sites in Parchment right now that are, PvE sites that are meant for smaller groups, basically only up to 3 people, and those are the Torpid Sleeper Hives, the Incipient Drone Swarms, the Convocation Watch Posts, and the Edencom Scout Fleets. 2 of those sites are unrunnable because, 1, for the Trig site, if you're living in Parchment, you don't wanna run things that will fuck up your Trig standing. Can I curse, by the way? I'm so sorry.
No, no, go right ahead. I swore several times already, so you're good.
Okay, I just wanna make sure. So I make sure I didn't demonetize or do anything like
Oh
that.
my god, my AdSense, damn.
My AdSense. Um, the Edencom Scout Fleet you don't want to run because you don't wanna fuck up your Edencom standing either, because if you're trying to be a day walker and not be destroyed while you're in cave space doing your thing, and you just happen to come across a Edencom, like fortification system. Well, you don't want to just like okay, well, I guess I have to treat that as Abazon. I can't just like I can't just waltz through this high sec system, this point 0.9 high sec system because I have bad Edencom standing. So you're not going to be running those either. So it basically only leaves the incipient drone swarms and the torpid sleeper hives. Incipient drone swarms are in an okay spot. They're basically the very beginner content because it's the easiest site, and you only get a 9 mil payout per pilot, which is whatever. It takes a little while to run the content. I've definitely made better ISK doing other stuff, especially during the Drifter Crisis. Um, but the real hellish thing comes when you try to run Torpid Sleeper Hives. They pay more, like at 28 mil before taxes, but you have to invest extremely heavily into actually running them. The rats are basically C4, C5 rats. They scram you, which basically means that you're locked onto the grid. It takes a very long time to run the site. Like I want to say you have to kill by like per capita 3 times as many rats in a torpid sleeper hive than you have to kill in a recipient drone swarm. So you could be like locked down there for 15, 20 minutes.
My god, and only 28 million ISK? That's
28
crazy.
million is per pilot, yeah. Plus you have a can that you can hack, but no one hacks the can because you don't want to ruin your fit by wasting a mid slot on a hacking thing. So either
Yeah,
you ask a fourth person to tag along, or you wait to refit like this data analyzer onto a ship that's not bonused for it. You have to hack a can. It's a whole thing. And even then, the payout from getting that can is basically just another 28 million ISK, as if you had like a fourth payout essentially. The site is just it's really
womp.
bad. It doesn't help anyone. Yeah, it definitely needs to be looked at. The small game PvE sites need a lot of love. Um, and so what I'm trying to get at is in Parchment specifically, and I want to like say as a general statement, in New Eden as a whole, there is not enough compensation for doing that small game content. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of the arguments I can see people are making it just like if you're making small game content, then it's too easy to bot or multi-box. But like obviously with the Drifter Crisis events that we had a couple months ago, like that to me was fantastic small game content. That was
100%.
that was hard enough that I was going to try to multi-box it. But that was too hard for me to multi-box. I don't know if it's just because I'm bad at the game or something, but like the amount of clicks you had to do and the amount of multitasking and the amount of different ships you need on grid in order to be successful through those little dungeons that they came up with made it so that you actually had to go out and talk to people to like run the sites. So
Yeah,
like Eve is very capable of having hard enough content that could be catered towards like small gains, and but we just need also the reward on top of that to make it more sustainable play style.
100%. The Drift for Crisis is actually, I think, the turning point for PvE in Eve, and that's a wild thing to say because a lot of them just call the sites recolored home fronts. But in reality, these were the first sites that actually were intent. Like I've heard this specifically from the CCP dev who was creating that, who resides in the Podchman Roundtable. He created these sites specifically in order to discourage multi-boxing, to make it inefficient to
My
multi-box
goodness.
them. So it's definitely possible to create this PvE environment where you get rewarded for doing stuff with actual humans that can't be multi-boxed. Vigilance points, I don't know if you've ever run them or even ever heard of them, but that is not small game content. I mean, you need a 10-man fleet, but it's basically impossible to multi-box. There's a person who has an alligator fleet comp that can technically run them, but it does so very inefficiently. And it's surprising to say that because I feel like there's so little in this game at this point in time that you can say, "Hey, you can multi-box this, but it's actually worse than if you were to have multiple humans."
Yeah.
And I think that it's a beacon of hope, vigilance points plus the content that was introduced through the Drifter Crisis for PvE, especially for small gang. It can happen. It can work.
Yeah, like for wormholes, like I live inside of a C5 wormhole. Like I can multi-box a bunch of the I like my goal this year is to raise 100 billion ISK and just go and roach C5 sites out of my C5 static and just become a trillionaire or whatever that way. Um, there there is a need for like that small gain content where you can go out with your buds, go make a ton of ISK, and then just go home laughing with your ISK wallets. Maybe not doubled in size, but like it felt like it was worth your time to go out there. Besides just going out and doing something interesting with your friends, there has to be a little bit more value with the risk that small gains need in order to maybe be able to go and contest with the larger groups. Maybe they're finding those flashpoints.
Yeah, 100%. And what's great about it too is that if these PvE opportunities for small game arises, well, guess what? So is the PvP, especially if it's in low sec or anywhere else. Well, I mean, obviously it's not going to be happening in high sec, but the PvP will actually increase too because these people will be fighting over these sites. You see this actually. I don't know if you are aware, but Tabitzer still has the Drifter Crisis sites, or at least the majority of them from the Drifter Crisis. Those sites have been evergreen in that area,
Oh,
and
cool.
there's a population of people there who still run the Deathless Research Outposts, and
Sweet.
obviously it's not common knowledge, and so therefore there's not a lot of contestation for it. But we
Yeah.
have, as my part of my group, had gone out there and contested these people for these sites, and they weren't expecting it because, well, I mean, we've just been running these nonstop, and no one really knows about them. But the PvP opportunity arises there because these people are crabbing, and so where there's a crab, there's a person who wants to fight the crab,
Yeah.
right? And so if it can happen for something as relatively minor as a single system having like basically one site that's being farmed consistently, generating PvP, that can happen anywhere
Oh my
for any
god.
site that is made correctly.
Yeah. Again, just like emergent gameplay. Like
Hmm.
you give the players a bone and then they'll figure it out and then there'll be other people who want to go and fuck with that play style. It happens all the time. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
exactly.
Yeah, that would make me
Introducing
really
one
sick.
niche inevitably creates many more niches down the road.
Yeah, that's sort of the cool thing about Eve is just like there I have people who are like what can I even do in Eve? They come to the stream, they're checking out the game for the first time and then I pull up that giant like flow chart of like the different things you could do in Eve that was like that's like
Hmm.
10 years old at this point. Like again, we're just always adding on to that. It's yeah, it makes Eve so cool.
Yeah, it's a very cool game. I don't think, well, I'm not even that I don't think there is no game like it. That's why I keep going back and why I
Yeah,
stayed this
same.
time.
Yeah. Speaking of making a crap ton of money, one thing I did see here was trig wormholes.
Hmm.
Um and trig salvage, especially specifically on the high sec side. What's going on with that?
So I don't know if you're aware of where the major. Do you know where your trig salvage is coming from?
I do.
I
My friend is one of the guys who does this content.
Yeah, so you'll know that trig T2 ships, the manufacturing of these trig T2 ships is entirely solely propped up by a bug with the K-space side of the Triglavian wormholes. And so multi-boxing Chronos players are able to basically have a stranglehold on the T2 trig market because they are the sole generators of this salvage. There's not very many other places that generate trig T2 salvage, and they're not nearly as efficient as constantly farming these holes. And even despite this, because of the introduction of the Barbaroga, a Nurgle is 300 million or a quarter of a billion as of what I'm saying right now. Last time I checked. That is ridiculous for an assault frigate of all things. And it doesn't get any better as you head further up in ship class. A Draugr is probably like what, 600 mil?
Yep.
A Ikatursa is maybe 800, 750, something like that. It is a terrible system, and it needs to be replaced entirely. It was allowed to exist even though it is a bug with the actual intended content for the drifter wormholes, but it can't be accepted anymore because it was the only way that they could figure out how to make the actual manufacturing supply chain work. And now that it clearly is not working anymore, there needs to be a different system in place, either through an LP store or like some other sort of gatherable within Podchven. And it has been discussed to introduce a Trig LP store. Hopefully that gets implemented correctly and therefore solves this issue. But regardless, the actual gameplay loop of abusing this Hospodar bug needs to be removed entirely so that the because it's an unhealthy game style for the economy.
Yeah. Like talking to my buddy, or I, yeah, a couple of my friends, like they do talk quite a bit about it, and something that I'm going to try to do off stream just to see what it's like. But it does sound completely broken and is very there. Something needs to change there. And as much as I don't want to piss off my friends, it is kind of crazy just the amount of ISK you're able to generate from just doing this one activity and relatively in relative safety. Like obviously you can always get ganked by somebody who also wants to be doing that exact same thing, but still it's kind of ridiculous the amount of money that they're able to pull.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. It because unfortunately the difficulty of actually stopping these people scales with the number of people or with the number of accounts that they have multi-boxing. Because if it's just one Chronos, then yeah, maybe you can bring in a bunch of Taluses and alpha it, but that gets infinitely harder the higher security space that you're in. There's just no way to counter it. And yeah, it's just unhealthy in just so many ways, and it just needs to be removed entirely. And yeah, obviously a lot of people have made their niches doing this, and that goes kind of very slightly counter to my argument that man, we need to preserve niches. But unfortunately, when things are just generally completely unhealthy for the game at large, they just need to be removed entirely.
Yeah, yeah, especially if it's like sorry, especially when things aren't like as intended by the developers. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
definitely things that need to get changed for sure. I just brought this
yeah.
up because I knew it was going to piss off my buddy. I'm going to get an earful from him later, but no, it's good that you're aware of it, and that's something that you, if you were to be elected, CSM would probably be trying to push pretty hard for.
Definitely
Um,
100%.
sweet. I had a good question that it just popped out of my brain. I saw my my other friend's bunch. Like, no way to counter. I don't know. Roll the wormhole.
Roll the
Um,
wormhole. Yeah, okay, no
yeah,
problem. I'll just roll the wormhole from the Podchvin side, even though that it populates from the K-space side. So therefore, you have a couple hours of me not being able to roll that hole from Podchvin. Yeah, that's a really counterable thing. I don't know. I might be a little bit salty about it, but there's a lot of intricacies with trig wormholes that make it so that that is not an actual feasible tactic. At least not for me as a solo
yeah,
player.
yeah. As a solo player, there's not a whole lot you can do besides like I don't know, get into like a bumping stabber and then bump their salvager or whatever off grid to sort
Yeah.
of fuck with their ISK per hour. But
I,
no,
I I've found good success actually in being in a T1 Salvager, basically a Heron, because it has those Salvager duration bonuses, and so you fit 3 Salvagers to that, and you are pretty zippy if you have an MWD. So you just zip around to wrecks as they appear and one shot the wrecks because you have such high actual salvaging chance, and that has definitely stopped. That has definitely stopped the bug abusers in their tracks. There, it has made me a few enemies, definitely. But it's very funny. It is a very funny thing because they can't do anything about it.
yeah,
It's yeah.
I'm
It's
gonna have to
that's
do. I'm
emergent
gonna have to
gameplay
do
right
that. I'm
there.
gonna have to do that later because my buddy he has some people that he doesn't like. So maybe this is something I can do to help him out and make a little bit of money off to the side.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Cool. Um, so we've talked about that you're sort of like an advocate for not just Podgeman, but you're a advocate for promoting small game content in Eve. We talked a little bit about just like how there are some things in Podgeman you would like to change in order to make it a little bit more lucrative space for individuals. We talked a lot about just like merc dens just being dead on arrival content, and if you were elected, that's something you would try to push towards for the towards CCP. Um, is there anything else you feel really strongly about that would probably help the greater Eve community? I know we touched on a little bit of Skyhook rating. Is there anything else there that you think needs to be really addressed?
Only one thing that I think really needs to be addressed from my perspective, and this could be discredited by people who are more in the manufacturing space. I feel like I do a fair amount of manufacturing in my spare time, so I feel like have a good grasp of the issues with trig manufacturing. But one thing that I would definitely advocate for is like the 100% decoupling of abyssal materials being gatherable only in Abyss. There needs to be a way to gather that in Podfin as well, because it doesn't make any sense from a lore standpoint or from a gameplay standpoint that this space where the trigs reside does not generate the basic material to build their ships. We see this we see an issue with how expensive it is to make T1 trig ships. It costs 30 million to make a Damavik hull. Costs another, I want to say, 20 million to make a Entropic disintegrator. So you're without anything else on that Damavik, it costs 50 mil. If you want to make a good Spider Damavik three man gang, that's going to cost you like 200 mil.
Yeah,
Why in the name of God would anyone do that for a T1 hull? It doesn't make any sense. So there really needs to be a decoupling of this abyssal materials from doing the abyssals, right? Doing
yeah,
these abyssal filaments. It needs to be available in both areas. I'm not saying to completely remove it from Abyss. I'm saying to add a different stream of where this resource can come from because it's not healthy as it is right now. It's basically it's made Damavix and Kikimoras prohibitively expensive. And if they are being run, they are bleeding to hell, and they are the easiest things to kill if you can actually catch them. Basically, the only time that it works is like to run these ships is if you spend like 200 mil to make it a nano fit, and you just kite out with it. Um, I don't know. It just definitely doesn't sit right with me that T1 trig hulls are as expensive as they are for honestly not that big of a combat difference,
yeah.
like for that whole class.
Do you think this would piss off the Abyssal runners? Because now you're sharing like one of the things that you make money from, with people who
So
aren't running
I want
Abyssals.
to say that the majority of the value that you're generating in the abyss is not from 0 point condensate and the crystalline isogen. That's obviously a portion of it, but the lion's share of it is definitely the red loot that you are selling to NPC buy orders and the jackpots that you can get from these BPC skill books and the mutaplasmids.
Yeah,
Those are the major things I think that you are getting at when you're running the abyss. And so if they are losing just a minuscule amount of value because abyssal materials are dropping in price, they're still getting these materials in the same quantities, but because there's another input stream than what there was previously, the price is obviously going down. Even though that price is going down, they're still getting the same amount. So if they're manufacturing with it, whatever, things change for them.
yeah, yeah,
But if they're concerned just because, oh, well, my bottom line is a little bit lower than it was previously, I think that is a very fair compensation to make the game healthier.
Yeah, yeah. Like it like you said, like it's mostly in red loots and those sort of jackpot drops that they can get from running abyssals.
Mhm.
There's like the isogen and the 0 point condensates could definitely be spread out to other areas of space because again, like isn't like abyssal space anyways, sort of like Potchman, just like somewhere else in like that area. I'm not 100% confident on like Potchman lore, but um from my understanding, it's just like abyssals are sort of Pochfen adjacent, anyways, for the most part.
Yeah, 100%. Like from a very like, high level lore perspective, the systems that were taken during the Trig invasion are literally ripped out of the same space time as the rest of like New Eden. Like they are attached to the flow of Bujan, which is what the Trigs call their which is what they call their home, right?
Yeah,
So it it just doesn't make any sense for it to not be available there.
cool. Um, I do have Ariel Rin waiting off to the side. He is currently watching and he's cheering you on. Um,
Thank you.
is there anything you would any final words, anything else you want to chit chat about before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening or day?
Yeah, sure. I just kind of want to address the people who are watching. I don't know how many people are actually tuned in or not,
We
but
got
I do
45,
want
which
to
is pretty
say
good.
that I know that there are you can have blinders on as a player. You can be unaware of certain things. I feel like I am very aware of a lot of things in this game, but I don't claim to be perfect in this regard. And that's why I really want to be able to talk with other people. The Trig Collective Discord was wonderful for that during the Drifter Crisis because people of all walks of Eve were interacting and talking during that time, and so I got to see and interact with all these people who are doing stuff basically in completely different areas of space. And I'm guessing that it was the same thing for the Trig invasion. All these different people were coming together for a single collective goal. And so what I'm trying to get at is that what I really want from people who are interested in me to be able to talk to me and give me their thoughts about everything. Obviously, like I have my ideas of what things should be like, but ideas can be refined. People can bring new perspectives. So if you can and you want to, please reach out to me in either the Trig Collective Discord or the Virage Discord. Those are both linked to my forum post. And also, speaking of my forum post, please leave comments or questions if you feel like you want to have any sort of conversation with me. And if you feel like you have a good idea of what I stand for and you agree with what I do, please consider adding me to your vote ballot when the time comes.
Awesome. Yeah. The fact that you're very strongly for small game content, and that's sort of like the content that I like to say that I'm trying to specialize in. You're probably won't get one of my votes. And we'll be pushing pretty hard for other people to also vote for you, and also the fact that you didn't kill my pacifier that one time, and you also were really cool.
Earned me a lot of brownie points that time,
So
I'm
many brownie
guessing.
points.
Hell yeah. Well, I do
uh,
appreciate it.
You're so welcome, dude. All right. Um, it was a pleasure talking to you. It's nice to put a voice to the name, and I hope to see you the next time some sort of goofy shit happens in Trig Space.
Definitely, 100%.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.
Yep, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Sweet. What a lovely individual. Yeah, I was. It was so